Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares. We'll look at what's going on in the global economy. Coming up, as terrorism rocks France, Israel may see another influx of new immigrants. And Haiti aspires to be the Taiwan of the Caribbean. First, the headlines. The World Bank cut its outlook for global growth as the oil price drop has failed to boost Europe and Japan and has pressured major oil exporters. The Washington-based institution expects the global economy to expand 3% this year, slower than its earlier 2015 forecast. The U.S. economy remains the single engine driving the global economy, while the Eurozone struggles to avert a third recession. The bank also cut its forecast for developing economies by more than half a percentage point. Borrowing costs are set to rise in emerging economies as the Fed moves towards its first rate increase since 2006, making it harder for emerging market governments to pay their debt obligations. Japan's cabinet approved a record $42 billion budget for defense spending amid a long-running maritime dispute with China. The new budget represents a 2.8% rise from the previous fiscal year and marks the third year of increased spending after a decade of cuts. Japan's new defense minister said it was needed to deal with the changing situation around Japan. A long-running dispute over islands in the East China Sea, known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China, has escalated since 2012. China has also seen a sharp increase in its official defense budget, which is more than 2.5 times larger than Japan's. The United Arab Emirates said OPEC would no longer shore up crude prices, arguing that rising North American shale oil output needed to be curbed. The pace of the oil slide accelerated in November when OPEC decided to maintain its production unchanged at 30 million barrels per day. Richer cartel members like the UAE accepted the price fall, hoping it would force higher-cost shale producers out of the market. But the U.S. government said U.S. oil production will increase both this year and next, despite the 60% oil price drop and OPEC's attempt to rein in the North American shale boom.
We cannot, as a responsible oil producer and a reliable supplier in the market, just stop our plans every time there is a volatility in the market. That is not wise, and that is not the plan.
Scotland's energy minister urged the British government to ease the tax burden on the North Sea oil industry to help it cope with sliding crude prices. When oil prices were high, North Sea oil was a boon for the British economy, leading London to raise taxes on the industry by 12% in 2011. Scotland called for support to help invest in new and existing oil fields, a tax credit to boost new exploration and drillings, and the removal of the 2011 tax hike. The oil industry employs about 225,000 people in Scotland, generating $26.9 billion in revenues for the regional economy in 2013.
We believe all three are necessary to bring back confidence and to rise to the very serious challenges met by the fall in the oil price. But Aberdeen has been here before. Oil was down at just $10 a barrel in 86 and 99. It's bounced back. It's tough. It's hard. It's strong. It's a resilient industry.
Hundreds of Hamas employees protested in front of the headquarters of the unity government in Gaza, vowing to stay until their salaries were paid. A union spokesman said staff recruited by the Hamas administration had not received any wages for 7 months. Since Hamas and Fatah reconciled, Hamas demanded Fatah pay the salaries of the 50,000 workers who took the jobs of Fatah employees after its bloody takeover of Gaza in 2007. Partial payments of $1,200 each were made to 24,000 Hamas workers in late October, but the other 26,000 who work in security functions have received nothing. Following the terrorist attacks in Paris, Israel expects yet another increase in the immigration of French Jews to the Jewish state in 2015. Though Israel has decades of experience absorbing new immigrants, the latest wave from Europe and the U.S. come with bigger pockets and higher demands. I-24 News reporters Anthony Lasme and Daniel Roth have the details.
Jews have the right to live in many countries, and it's their right to live in full security. But I believe that they know deep down in their hearts that they have one country, the State of Israel.
In Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made yet another call for Jews of France to move to Israel, following similar tropes during the times of previous prime ministers such as Ariel Sharon and Yitzhak Shamir. More than 6,000 French Jews moved to Israel last year, and though there has been some backlash from the French Jewish community, the number could double or more after the tragic events in Paris that claimed the lives of 17 people, including 4 Jews. Is Israel ready for this possible new wave of immigration?
We have the means and capacity to accept new immigrants, to welcome, to embrace, to help the 10,000 and tens of thousands who want to come here.
The optimism should be taken with a grain of salt. There are difficulties, including real estate. Israel is a small area and the birth rate is on the rise. Today, almost 1/3 of the foreign buyers of real estate are French. According to one real estate developer in the central Israeli suburb of Ra'anana, popular with French buyers and 20 kilometers from Tel Aviv, the movement continues to grow.
Before, the French were looking for a vacation apartment. Now it's an apartment to live in. There are more and more families coming to Ra'anana and wanting to live for good.
The majority of French want to settle near the coastal areas, where prices have skyrocketed over the last decade, and again, the situation will get harder.
I think the arrival of French or other foreigners to Israel will generate rising real estate prices in Israel.
The price increase is and will be a blow to Israelis who poured into the streets in 2011 to protest the rising cost of living. As well, new immigrants face the challenge of finding employment. The unemployment rate in Israel is currently 5.7%, far from the 10.4% in France. Even if Israel gains from added trained and educated people to the workforce, many obstacles await new immigrants. An NGO called Gvahim helps them to find work in their field.
There's so many bureaucracy, and the Olim, they don't know what to do first. So I think the government has stated that they are trying to do more for that, for all these professions, to simplify the process. So this is good, it's good intentions, but now what we need to see is that the intentions are translated into actions.
Another difficulty is found in ensuring that diplomas are translatable from France to Israel. Many are highly skilled, but struggle with having their diplomas recognized. From awareness to action, the process is slow-moving as new immigrants find their way, just as waves have work to do before them.
And we're joined now by Lionel Friedfeld for a discussion of the expected boom in new immigrants to Israel from France. Mr. Friedfeld, thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Mr. Vin.
Yes. So France basically has the 3rd largest Jewish community in the world after Israel and the U.S. How many of those 500,000 Jews do you expect will come to Israel?
It's actually very difficult to answer the question. What we can understand is that last year you approximately have 6,000 Jews coming to Israel, and next year it's forecasted that 10,000 Jews will come to Israel. So if we take that into perspective, in 5 or 10 years, approximately 100,000 and 200,000 Jewish people will come to Israel, depending obviously of the security position in France.
Right. I mean, I was going to say, because this past year we didn't see necessarily what we saw over the past month, right? Yeah. Is Israel ready to accept a growing wave of immigrants from the Western world, so to speak?
It is ready because Israel has a very strong economy. It has 2.6% of growth in 2014. For the past few years, the growth was in between 3 to 5%. In terms of, GDP per habitant, Israel has approximately $40,000 per habitant. France has $45,000, so the gap is very narrow. And also a very important note is that unemployment is very low. It was 5.6% at the end of last quarter of 2014, and also in Israel has a very low debt. S&P is rating the debt of Israel with an A+, and also, the deficit of the budget was 2.8% of the GDP, which is considered very low, below the trigger of the 3%.
Right. Now, when the Russian Aliyah came, so to speak, the immigration of the early 90s, I mean, we saw all these people with tremendous educations flow into Israel. At that point in time, it greatly boosted the high-tech industry. What kind of effect do you see the French immigration having on Israel?
Actually, the same effect, plus other positives, like side. The first point is the French alliance. If you take the example of Teva, one of the leading, pharmaceutical company, one of the head of R&D of Teva is Elisabeth Kogan of French origin. They made alliance between 20 to 10 years ago. Also, the founder of Google, Yuval Marek, which is considered as the greatest engineers, she invented with her team, an intuitive search of Google bar, like the preferred search. She founded Google, and now she's working and she's the head of Yahoo Labs. So this is two key examples of contribution of French Jewish, contribution to the state of Israel. And the last is also Tassia Avirit, Israel aerospace industry. The former CEO of Tassia Avirit in Europe and the former head of R&D is David Harari, which invented the drone. He was also of a French origin.
Okay. Well, one last word maybe for the French people out there who are interested in coming to Israel?
Yeah, there is plenty of opportunity just to work hard, but to work on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Financial analyst Leon Friedfeld from France and Israel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Economists have long hoped that Haiti could become the Taiwan of the Caribbean. Surtab, a company that produces slick Android tablet computers bearing the stamp Made in Haiti, is certainly a step in the right direction. More in this story.
This is Haiti, but perhaps not as you know it. Here in the clean room of Surtab, in the capital Port-au-Prince, workers assembled some 20,000 Android tablets in 2014, and the company hopes to triple that this year. But despite this early success, Surtab faces a battle against perceptions that Haiti doesn't equal high-tech.
Until they get here and look at the installations, they don't even believe that we're really doing this in Haiti. We even had workers that would go home and say that's what they're doing, and people not believing, we're not making this. So they had to bring us up at home saying, okay, yeah, I made this. And still someone would ask, can you disassemble and reassemble it right now?
Another challenge faced by many here cropped up during an interview. Frequent power cuts make life difficult across Haiti. But within a few minutes, the backup generator kicks in and production resumes. The tablets themselves come in different varieties. The cheapest Wi-Fi only model offers full internet access at a low price, while the top of the range compares favorably with cutting-edge devices. So, could Surtab herald a new manufacturing-based business model for Haiti? Former State Department analyst Robert Maguire says there have long been hopes to turn the country into a so-called Taiwan of the Caribbean.
I'm not sure that an economy based upon just people sitting in a factory all of the time is a real way to develop a country, absent other elements of the economy. It can be a part of the solution, but too often I think it's seen as the solution.
There's also a question over salaries. Not all workers are happy with performance-based pay, which has a low base rate.
Compared between when the production line is going and when it's not, that's two different things. Surtab pays a salary that's very low, seriously low. But they offer an opportunity that we can make the most of.
Surtab says it's proud of the fact that it always pays at least 1.5 times the minimum wage. While manufacturing jobs may not be a cure-all for the country's economy, there is a certain pride that comes from seeing each tablet bearing the stamp Made in Haiti.
And now it's time for a look at some stories we picked just for you from the world press in Media Watch with Daniel Roth. Daniel Roth, thanks for joining us.
How's it going?
Good, good.
So the focus today is somewhere we never focus, which is the US of A. We always focus on the US of A. That was a joke. But that's
a Canadian joke. Yeah,
it's a Canadian joke.
Right.
Sorry. The big story is that the U.S. is actually doing pretty good economically.
Okay.
President Obama noted to his Republican counterparts that they're seeing 58 straight months of job growth, the deficit cut by 2/3. All of this good news, and they're just starting a new session in Congress, and of course the Republicans in Congress, their answer was, well, we don't really care. We're still going to attack your record. We're still going to push for Republican policy.
Why does everybody still want to kick Obama, considering that the U.S. actually is doing incredibly well compared to the rest of the world right now.
Right, compared to the rest of the world, certainly. And there are problems, economic problems. Too many of those jobs are part-time jobs. There's a lot of problems. But the Republicans aren't answering any of those economic problems. They're more interested in kicking Obama economically. And one of the smartest op-eds I read this week was saying, listen, Republicans, you're not going to win this battle. The numbers are there. You shouldn't lie about the economy because the numbers are there. You can't really get away with it. And that, at the end of the day, is what is going to happen in the next 2 years. That's going to tell the story in the next 2 years.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing more about that from Dan Lenoir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That is it for the Economy Magazine today, your daily source for economic and financial reports at I-24 News. I'm Benjamin Chong-Lafares. Thanks for watching, and join us again tomorrow.